All right, hello everybody. Let's get into it. Hello, my name is JJ Moran. As always, I am the host of the Survivor Roysan Northfield Farm. You are watching the behind the scenes podcast. We are coming to you live 2 days after the 11th episode. I can't even believe I just had to look off 11 episodes we've released at this point. It's the Survivor Gods. That's the name of this episode. As always, I'm joined with my co-host of the podcast and executive producer, Liam Houghton.
Hello, JJ. Penultimate episode. Can't believe we're here already.
It's shocking to believe when you and I, and this is all we've done this summer, is work on this show, and all last summer, and actually the last 2 years, really. It's shocking to believe that we're already here, the penultimate, second to last episode. It's the Survivor Gods, again, is the name of this one. A lot of fun. I like this episode. It's kind of these are the big players. These are everybody who's been, really working it out through this game, and they've come so close to the finish. And I look at this episode as like the Titans kind of putting their pieces. They're getting their ducks in a row going into that final episode. You see, everyone has final tribal on their mind at this point. Everyone is talking endgame. Everyone, basically, they can all see the finish line. They're right there. And this episode is all about, like, how am I going to best... I still have to get there, but how am I going to best set myself up to put myself in a position to win? You're starting to see that mindset.
Yeah, Final Six is always an interesting numbers. It's easy to picture different combinations, and we've spent 10 weeks with these people, so now we should know their past and who they can and shouldn't work with. And yeah, it's always fun to see how this plays out.
And it still surprises me too. I remember it did on the weekend, and reviewing the footage as we go through this edit, it still surprises me too that it's like how strong those original alliances are. Like, it's kind of been the theme of the season is Pittman and Gibson have been these unbreakable forces that, like, you just see they keep butting heads and going at it. And there have been some blindsides. We've gotten those. They've happened this season. But at the end of the day, we're still looking at the way this episode breaks down is there's 4 Pittmen standing in a field conspiring over here, and then 2 Gibson on the other side of the farm, just watching them, just openly being like, there they are. They're the 4 Pittmen that they've been coming after us this whole game. It used to be 5 Pittmen. Now it's 4 Pittmen, and they're coming after us. And, like, what are we going to do about it? We're all just standing around. And it's so interesting how that breaks down. They didn't know each other for that long before they did the merge. Like, it was really only a day and a half before we put them all in the same camp. But still, it's amazing how that early time period sets such a standard for these players that come in.
Yeah, I think we've tried to structure the game to try to almost break that up by doing the swap right before the second night. But yeah, it's always first impressions, I guess, is so strong. And that first night is exciting and fun, and you all get to spend time together without the game really starting. So it must be those bonds that keep you together. But yeah, this time they literally got back to camp, and when it's this late in the game, you don't really even need to pretend anymore. So it was, okay, we're going to go to the bathroom, us 4. See you later. And we don't need anyone watching you. We don't really care.
Right. It's so crazy. Yeah, but you know what? It's worked for them up. It had worked for them up until this point in the game, and it continues to do so. So, it's all part of their strategy, and good for them. But it is just still funny how I love that shot of cutting away to Karen and Jen, and they're just standing there. So, would you vote for Vega in final? I'd vote for Matt. I'd vote for Matt. I'd vote for Matt in final. What about Michelle? I like Michelle. I'd vote for Matt. Like, they're both sitting there. They both basically know at that point. They're like, one of us, at least one of us, is going to be in the jury. Maybe one of us can sit in final tribal with those guys, but they have such a heavy hand at that point that the 2 of them are convinced that they're like, one of us is destined to end up in the jury, and they're just having that very honest conversation with themselves at this point in the game. It's interesting.
Yeah, they're almost stand-in for the audience, right? It's like,
totally.
Hey, why isn't Michelle looking at Matt or Vega, or why isn't Vega looking at? Like, I get why Megan, no one's looking at Megan, but yeah, well, like, what about them? Yeah, that was a fun little
I love
cut.
that moment. It's very honest, but it is also like, and hey, it's true too. Like you're sitting there as the audience. You're going like, well, these four are gonna have to duke it out at some point. So like, well, they're a little earlier. Like, where's the hang up there? So kind of funny how that works.
There's a nice little
And
breakup too of Jen being like, "I'm gonna really look for an idol," and she's digging around, and then Karen to camera like, "It's not looking very good for us over here." So
yeah, it's a pretty good moment. But you know what? I mean, hey, they didn't know it really. Well, Jen was hoping, hopeful for it, but there still was an idol out there in play. They just didn't really know where to look. Matt knew where to look, and so we caught up with him actually. Who I also like that moment too, where like his little confessional where he's weighing his options on when because like part of the thing of like these guys like getting their putting their final pieces into play is you have two different people who both have idols, so to speak. Like Matt doesn't yet, but he knows where it is. He knows where to pick it up. So he's considering when he wants to play that idol. And then you have Michelle who's sitting there considering when she wants to play hers that she does have in possession of. And I like seeing that. Those are two like back-to-back moments where you're seeing like how they're considering what. Matt is more like, I want to play it now and have it be this big flashy thing that I could add to my resume going into Final Tribal. And then Michelle is saying, I want to keep it to myself. I'd like to not have to play this at all because I want to be able to whip it out at Final Tribal and say, look, I got this thing. You guys didn't even know I was a big idol hunter, but I was. I didn't have to play it against any of you. I didn't tell any of you about it. I'm a better gamer than all of you. Like that was her plan. It's funny how they both kind of looked at it in two very different ways.
yeah, and they've played very similar games, so it's interesting that different mindsets and I think different positions in the game as well, and different styles of play. It's why Survivor's been on for 25 years and why we make homemade fake ones and pour 2 years of effort into it. Like
because it's a very interesting, very fun game.
Yeah,
we love
it's
it.
dynamic.
Yes, indeed. Also, too, before we really get into the challenge, it's hard to miss in this episode. It's kind of everywhere. Um, we had somebody from the BSS must have been called in because we had a helicopter that for a vast majority of this episode, and this is very much in real time. Like it made the edit, but it was very real that there was a helicopter just circling over the camp for a little while, which was kind of fun.
It's nice to. I'm sure a lot of the contestants thought we were making up the story. So when the next day there actually was a little agency helicopter making sure everything was all right, it's kind of like, hey guys, told you, like we're not messing around here. Like,
I mean, Megan literally says, she goes, I think they're just checking to see what we're doing. And I was like, yeah. And she says it kind of jokingly. But it was like, yeah, that's exactly why they're in the sky right now.
like, don't worry about it.
So anyways, no, I mean, if you were annoyed by the helicopter sounds at any point throughout the episode, we're sorry. That is just legitimately what happened at this point in the episode throughout the weekend.
It's nice to,
and then
it's been in the intro the whole time too. So it's nice to be like, nope, that's real. That happened. So
totally. I actually had someone in my family was asking me not long ago, like, why do you have the helicopter at the end of the finale? I mean, at the end of the theme song. And I was like, you'll see. You have to keep watching and see. It has paid off. I hope you all enjoy it. All right, so we leave camp and we go to the challenge, which this was one of my just absolute favorites throughout the whole weekend. I remember in the podcast episode that we had Mike on, I wanted to kind of talk about one of the future ones without giving it away. This was one of them because he built the platforms that everybody was making the fires on. I thought this episode's challenge was so cool. Fire making is such a classic Survivor challenge trope thing, whatever you want to say about it. It worked, I thought, so well for this final six. This group was really interesting going into it. Vega came out of it I remember I filmed that confessional where he's talking about how proud he felt after winning it, which was such a real, like, raw moment. He had a few of those in this last day where he just got very honest and very raw to camera, and that was one where he was just like, I did not think I was a good, fire maker. This is a really cool moment for me, and I think you got to see a lot of that on camera.
Yeah, Vega actually, I think that Monday or whatever, after filming messaged me and was like, "Hey, could you send me a clip of that challenge? That one meant a lot." So yeah, he killed it. That was hard. The supplies we gave him was right off the farm, natural,
Yep.
wet, gross, hard to build a fire with stuff. So now it took a lot of concentration and dedication to get it high enough to burn that rope.
Kind of not a burn at Zach, I guess, but like it was too. It's just funny. Vega goes back to camp and he goes, "I just had Zach in my head telling me like exactly how he would build a fire," and they just got rid of Zach. Like if Zach was in this challenge, you don't know for certain, but he probably would have done pretty well at it, considering the guy who did win was like, I just took all of Zach's advice and I made a perfect fire.
Dancing
But
on the
no,
grave.
it was cool. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, and shout out to Mike Casey. I think the whole pre-production, I was like, "Hey, don't worry if we can't get them to be elevated fire making. If we can just do them on the ground, that works too." But watching them with the elevation, just camera angles and the way we would have had to film it otherwise, this is far, far, far better than the ground would have looked.
Also, the little the flag that comes up on the little bungee or not bungee cord. What's the word? Spring that comes up on the spring. I just love the whole thing. I just felt like was awesome, and he did such a good job engineering this one. It just looks great, and I think all the like even giving them the matches and the metal plate and everything. It just looked for something that could have been this kind of like dirty challenge. I thought it looked really like well kept and clean and nice. It was nice visually. As just the production guy inside of me is just like, oh wow, I liked editing this one. I like this was just a fun challenge all around.
Doing it with H2, I think that framed the supplies in the background well, and then back and forth. Yeah.
That bridge actually. So for anyone who's ever watched our old seasons of the show, was not always there. That's a land bridge that did not always exist, and we used to have to like what was it? There was like a big tube. No. It was a big log. It was the telephone poles that were laid down, and we used to have to walk over it that way.
Yeah, and then for the real ones out there, Survivor Lakes region, the rainstorm that washed a bunch of stuff out. I think my parents were nervous about having cars get stuck on the other side with no way back. So yeah, they spent the big bucks to get that little thing built.
But it is nice, and to your point, I'm happy we got to incorporate it into a challenge. It looks nice visually on camera, but they have to cross that bridge every time they go to and from a camp to tribal, camp to a challenge, like whatever it is. They go over that little land bridge all the time. There's a nice little stream that runs underneath it, and so yeah, it doesn't end up in the episode a lot. Sometimes we'll use B-roll footage from it where you'll see water trickling by or something like that. A lot of times it's from that, and then it doesn't actually really end up in the episode. So happy we got it in there. It just looked nice, and so yeah, that was the fire making one. All around good stuff. And then we move on to post challenge. We're getting ready for tribal. I thought this was an interesting one as well because, again, like we were speaking to earlier, it's like they could have gone multiple different directions with this one. Like Jen, who ultimately did go home. If you're one of those big four from Pittman, it's not a nothing conversation to go back to camp and say like, hey, let's turn maybe towards one of us because now's the time. 6 is a good opportunity to get rid of one of the bigger players and that we don't have to worry about in the next phase of the game.
Yeah, like I said earlier, with the 6 is an easy number to kind of break down and visualize. So yeah, Vega and Michelle ended up in the middle, having to choose between sticking with the original Pittman of Matt and Megan or going to Gibson of Jen and Karen. And it was interesting to see that it was everyone knew they were the swing and they were telling each side that they were going to let the other people know that they're the swing. So everyone was in on them. Yeah, it's very dynamic and interesting.
It's funny, they talk about all the real plans and the fake plans. It's essentially this episode, there was one real plan and one fake plan, and that the other side was getting the just mirror versions of sort of thing. And so, yeah, that's interesting. And when I said actually a minute ago too, that like get rid of one of the bigger players and not like, I didn't mean to say that Jen, not a big player. Like it is one of these things where Vega says it straight up in one of his confessionals where he's like, I'm trying to think like who are going to be one of my bigger competitors. Obviously, he'd proven himself throughout that point of the weekend as a like great at challenges. Well, Jen, to his point, was always nipping right at his heels in most of the challenges that he had either won or also done just well in. Jen was right there with him the whole time. I love that moment that he says like she outlasted most of the contestants doing um, the plate, not the plate. What's it called?
Disc.
I'm doing it now. The
Yeah.
funny thing is, you go the disc holding challenge, and then she has to put. She did really well at holding the balls, and then he like thinks for a second. He's like, on a disc, I guess. It's the same thing.
Same ones too.
Same discs, yes.
But shout out to our girl Karen, who was the challenge dominant member of the Gibson tribe early on, and she played down her risk level, and she survived longer than everyone else because they thought Jen and Darren were better at challenges. So
that is so true.
it was part of the fun little shit we were giving her early on, but it paid off. She was 100% right. It's true. A little funny. And she's decked out in her cat outfit for the final day, and I think it fits her storyline perfectly. She's has 9 lives in this game. She's missed probably around 9 times she could have gone home at this point.
Oh, it's a crazy number because like by the time that like I think it's actually in the next episode, if I'm thinking of it, this isn't really spoiling anything. In one of the finale tribals, I say to her at one point, or I'm like, someone who's like almost gone home a bunch of times or whatever, and then I say that and I'm like, sorry, no offense, Karen, but you've said that yourself. And she's like, yeah, no, I know. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you've been on the shopping block basically most of the game. And so, yeah, no, it's funny actually you say that about the cat outfit because in my brain, like walking away from the weekend, that is who Karen was. And then it was funny, like editing a lot of the footage, the whole like for the other episodes going into this final day, she's not wearing that outfit. But in my memory, Karen is just wearing a full head to toe cat outfit. And it fits her so well. It's so funny. And yeah, and then to watch the other episodes, and I was like, oh yeah, she didn't wear that like entire cat outfit the whole weekend. That's kind of interesting. But
I've had a couple people almost be angry about that outfit in the past year. Like, I just hated that outfit, which I think was part of the fun of it too. You know,
it stands out on camera, which is great. Yeah. Like again, just as a visual thing. Like we also ask contestants when they're coming on, like you're free to wear colorful stuff. We just ask that you don't do like overly branded, gear. And there's no brands on it. It's just cats, just a bunch of pictures of cats.
It's awesome. It's funny.
It is awesome. I love it. And this is just a side note on myself. I mean, man, this is where I remember last year when we filmed this, my whole thing with it was that like I was getting very probably like maybe a little artsy about it, but like I remember being like, as soon as the season starts, I am not actually one of the contestants, but I'm going to live like one of the contestants, and I'm not going to bathe. I'm not going to change my clothes. The only time that I change my clothes is I'm wearing a white like athletic gear shirt the first 2 days, and then changed into the button up that I've got on for the story. But other than that, I don't change. I don't shower. I don't bathe myself in any way. And now I'm like starting to see it. Like that's one of those things where on camera I'm like, I'm starting to look just as gross as these other guys at the camp.
It is amazing what just one weekend does to you. And if you ever catch production people in the background, I think we all are looking our worst in these final episodes.
Yeah, it's a little, we get a little gross at this point. It is funny too. I mean, like nothing beats that first shower that you take getting home from this weekend. Nothing beats that first like, brushing your teeth or and we can brush our teeth throughout the weekend. I guess that's a bad example, but like, yeah, the shower and the first real meal you have. And it is so funny. It's only 3 days, but like we're, at the end of it, it's just so exhausting. We're running around doing this thing the whole time.
I've always argued that these 3 days are harder than the first 3 days of a real Survivor season.
Probably just in the sense that like a real Survivor season, they're just sitting around mingling essentially for the first 3 days, other than that one initial challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, and the psychological aspect, and you always have to be on. Yeah, and this is peak Stockholm syndrome, where I think production and the contestants are like, I just want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. And then as soon as we leave, oh, that was actually pretty fun. That was cool.
Yeah, totally. All right, so now we're at Tribal. Do you have any notes on Tribal? This was one of those ones where they kind of talked in circles for a minute, and then I go like,
Yeah.
all right, well, it's time to vote.
I thought Jen and Karen had a pretty funny moment when they were like,
oh, when they hold hands?
yeah, they're like, no one wants to talk to us, and which we saw earlier in the episode. I would say this episode, this Tribal is a good like recap of what that segment, this episode was of in the episode and in real time, what we were all feeling.
Yeah, and then Jen goes home. Nothing crazy happens. I'm just kind of looking at some of the footage right now and seeing anything that pops up. Not really, but like again, another good episode. I'll continue with our tradition at this point in praising the people that go home. Jen, awesome to have this weekend. We were again, just like everybody else who's played, we were very glad to have her. Such a sweetheart on and off camera. And yeah, no, I mean, nothing but good things.
And I think if just one or two things break a different way, Jen is in the power position heading into this final episode. She just was on Gibson that lost 3 of the first 4, and that just put her behind the 8 ball. But also, I shout out Jen's like wicked smart. Like her thing is scientist, but it's like a PhD scientist. Like she has her PhD and is doing something with it. I don't know.
Yep.
But so yeah, shout out Jen.
Shout out Jen. Played a great game, and she really did too. Like it is. Sometimes it is sad to when you're just on a tribe that doesn't do particularly well at the beginning, and then that kind of like haunts you the rest of the game. But she was on top of it the entire time too. Like she was the one. I think one of the big episodes for me with her is not only finding when they're at Gibson right before the swap episode is what I'm talking about. Is when they find the idol right off the bat at the beginning. And then when they get swapped, she's the one that's saying like, okay, like we're going to have to play this smart. And she wasn't selfish about it either. That was a, idol that she could have taken and just pocketed herself. But she said to herself like, no, I mean, like this is for the greater, this is for the tribe unity. And we're going to try to make our tribe strongest going into the post-merge era. So whoever wins this first challenge, that second challenge, like if we think things are going to go south, we're going to have to pass off the idol. And then she ultimately does do that to Karen and everything. So like she played a great game. It was just, at a certain point, it became overwhelming that the Pittman people, they were playing very strongly together. And her and Karen, as hard as they might try to break through, were unable to.
Yep. It's a tale as old as Survivor time.
That is Survivor, baby.
Yeah.
It's the Survivor gods.
Yeah. They pick their favorites early on, and some people have to work harder than others. It's like life.
All right. Any final notes on this episode before I do our little send off?
No, it's a fun one. It's the table setter. It's one more to go, baby.
One more to go, baby. That is a pretty good way of me sending us into this last minute of the podcast. I just want to thank you all. There's going to be, so just a little programming note, there's going to be like a gap in next week. The finale will come out, as all the other episodes have, on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. We're very excited. It is an hour-long episode. It's going to be a little longer than all of our other episodes have been sub 30 minutes, but we've got 4 tribals to cover in this next episode. So there was a lot of 4 tribals, 3 challenges, lot to cover. So this one's an hour long. And then after the finale comes out, there will not be a podcast in the next 2 or 3 days afterwards. You have to wait like another week and a half. We're doing something a little special for that one. We're going to try to film with a few people in person, actually. And it's going to be a little more than just Liam and I talking about the finale. We're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, but you can expect that one to come like a week and a half later. But again, other than that, we want to thank you so much, kind of like playing off this as if this is the last regular podcast. I just want to say thank you all for joining us on this journey this summer. These episodes have been a big passion project for Liam and I to work on over the last 2 years. There were a lot of people that were involved in making all of this, so I thank them all as well. Thank all the contestants. And yeah, nothing but good things to say for everybody who helped us out on this, and for all of you who have watched this. It just means the world to us. And so anyways, like, subscribe, share, go back, check to make sure that I like all of the other episodes I watched, because that helps with the algorithm. So help us out a little bit. Go back, like some other episodes, like the podcast, do whatever you need to do. Tell your friends and family about this. Now these episodes are just going to be in in 1 week from now. Every single episode is going to be available on the internet, and then you can tell people to just binge it. Like I said, all the episodes are less than a half hour, so you can watch it in a day or two. Yeah, it's really exciting that it's all out there. I can't even believe that we're coming to the end of it finally. And that's it. Liam?
Yeah, I think these episodes work really well in a rewatch too. I think you'll catch little things that are like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. So yeah, it's one more week and we're done. It's been great. I feel great about this one. I've said in the past, it's had this vision in my head of doing these, and that's why we've done them year after year. And this one finally feels like kind of what I've pictured in my head. So feels good. Thanks, JJ. You've put in a hell of a lot of work, and you're going to go on a nice little vacay after. So you've earned it.
That is true. When the final episode is actually released, I will be deep in the mountains of Washington State, doing a little soul search journey or something like that. And yeah, so anyways, I don't at me, basically. I won't respond until I get back. So anyways, that is all. Thank you again for watching the podcast. This has been great. And until next time, good night.
Yeah.